Before the bombs fell and before history carved its scar into the waters of Hawaii, Pearl Harbor was simply a naval base waking up under a calm Pacific sunrise, a quiet Sunday morning on December 7th, 1941, where sailors joked about shore leave, some attended chapel services, others wrote letters home, describing island sunsets and dreams for the future, unaware that within minutes their world, and America's, would be forever changed. At 7:55 a.m., the first wave of Japanese aircraft descended from the clouds, engines roaring like thunder over Oahu, and what began as confusion quickly became catastrophe as torpedoes ripped through the hulls of battleships and bombs exploded with terrifying precision, sending pillars of smoke spiraling into the sky. Aboard the USS Arizona, a catastrophic blast split the ship apart, killing more than 1,000 men in an instant, while across the harbor, sailors dove into oil-covered waters, pulling wounded comrades from flames and debris, some firing back with whatever weapons they could reach, others sacrificing their lives to save those trapped below deck. In less than 2 hours, the Pacific Fleet was devastated. More than 2,400 Americans were dead, over 1,000 wounded, and the illusion of distance as protection had been shattered, proving that even across vast oceans, freedom could be threatened. Radios across the mainland interrupted music and Sunday programming with urgent bulletins, and families gathered around living room sets in stunned silence. Mothers clutching photographs of sons stationed overseas, fathers staring at newspapers in disbelief, children sensing that something enormous had just occurred. Yet what the attackers miscalculated was not military strength, but national character. Because while the bombs destroyed ships, they forged unity. And while the smoke darkened the harbor, it clarified the American resolve. The following day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt stood before Congress and delivered words that would echo through generations, calling December 7th a date which will live in infamy. And in that solemn chamber, the United States declared war, not out of vengeance alone, but out of determination to defend liberty and restore security. Almost overnight, America transformed as automobile factories retooled to produce tanks and aircraft. Shipyards operated around the clock, launching vessels at unprecedented speed, and millions of young men volunteered for service, forming lines so long they wrapped around city blocks, driven not by hatred, but by duty. Women stepped into factories and offices in numbers never seen before, symbolizing a united home front that understood victory required collective sacrifice. The attack intended to cripple instead awakened what Admiral Yamamoto himself reportedly feared, a sleeping giant filled with a terrible resolve. Months later, at the Battle of Midway, American intelligence and courage turned the tide of the Pacific War, sinking 4 Japanese aircraft carriers and proving that Pearl Harbor had not broken the nation, but strengthened it. From Guadalcanal to Normandy, from the icy waters of the North Atlantic to the burning sands of North Africa, American forces carried with them the memory of that December morning, fighting not merely for territory, but for a principle, that freedom must be defended against tyranny wherever it rises. The generation that answered the call became known as the greatest generation, because they understood that comfort could be sacrificed for cause, that fear could be mastered by courage, and that unity could overcome even the darkest assault. Pearl Harbor stands today not only as a memorial of loss, but as a symbol of resilience, the white structure above the USS Arizona resting over the remains of those who never left their post, reminding visitors that vigilance is the price of liberty. It teaches that strength is not measured by avoiding hardship, but by rising after it, that patriotism is not loud in moments of ease, but steadfast in moments of trial, and that America's greatest power has never been its ships or planes alone, but its people, ordinary citizens capable of extraordinary resolve when freedom is threatened. December 7th, 1941, was the day America was attacked, but it was also the day America proved it could not be broken, because from tragedy came unity, from shock came purpose, and from devastation came a force that would help secure victory in the largest global conflict the world had ever seen. The harbor that once burned now stands quiet, yet its silence speaks loudly across generations, reminding us that the spirit awakened that morning still lives wherever Americans stand together under one flag, determined that no enemy, no matter how bold, will ever extinguish the resolve of a nation forged in sacrifice and strengthened by freedom. And yet, beyond the strategy, beyond the war maps and headlines, the true legacy of Pearl Harbor lives in the individual stories of courage that unfolded in those chaotic hours, in the sailors who remained at their posts as flames surrounded them, in the officers who gave orders knowing they might not survive, in the medics who worked without pause amid smoke and falling steel. There were men who could have fled, but chose instead to run toward danger. Men who untied lifeboats for others before thinking of themselves. Men who manned anti-aircraft guns with little training and no time to prepare, determined to defend their brothers and their flag. Their actions were not scripted, not rehearsed, not performed for history books, but born from instinct, loyalty, and love of country. Pearl Harbor revealed something profound about the American character, that in moments of sudden darkness, ordinary citizens are capable of extraordinary bravery. The attack also reshaped the nation's place in the world, ending isolation and ushering the United States into a defining global role, where its military strength, industrial might, and democratic ideals would help shape the outcome of the 20th century. But perhaps its most enduring impact was internal, a reminder that complacency carries risk and that preparedness preserves peace. Every generation since has looked back at that morning not only with sorrow, but with reverence, honoring those who paid the ultimate price and learning from the lessons written in smoke above the harbor. Today, when visitors stand over the quiet waters of Pearl Harbor and watch the oil still rising in droplets from the USS Arizona below, often called the Tears of the Arizona, they are witnessing more than history. They are witnessing memory, sacrifice suspended in time. The silence there is not empty but sacred, carrying the weight of lives interrupted and futures never lived, yet also carrying pride in a nation that refused to surrender its ideals. Pearl Harbor reminds us that freedom is never guaranteed by geography, that oceans do not replace vigilance, and that unity is the strongest defense any republic possesses. It calls each generation to remember that the price of liberty was paid in real blood by real men and women on a real morning when the world changed. And as long as that memory endures, as long as Americans teach their children what happened and why it mattered, the spirit awakened on December 7th, 1941, will continue to guide the nation forward, resilient, vigilant, and forever committed to defending the freedom that defines it.